Hello, welcome to another amazing webinar at RS Studio. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Kamar, who is a senior Salesforce consultant at Encapsulate. Welcome to this webinar, Kamar.
Thank you, Raza, for inviting me into this webinar. Very happy to be here.
Okay, so we have an amazing topic of getting started with qforceDX. It wouldn't take much long, and let's just dive into it. So over to you, Kamar.
Sure. Can we share the screen? All right, so just a little bit of background. What is qforceDX? qforceDX is basically a command line tool developed to help with the Salesforce development. As a Salesforce developer, we have to use SFDX, Salesforce CLI, and there is a lot of things that we have to run these commands over and over again. SFDX can be cumbersome at times. We have to combine 2 or 3 different commands to execute and get what we want. So as a developer, I used to write some scripts, batch script that would automate and combine 2 or 3 different commands and make life easier for me. And I don't have to type too much. I can just run this bash script and be done with it. A few years ago, I had to switch from Mac to a Windows machine, and all my bash script were not available on the Windows machine because of the Windows limitations. And at that point, I thought I should build something that will be available across the board, and I don't have to worry about rebuilding my scripts over and over again. At that time, I did some research and I found this amazing framework called OCLIF, and it basically helps you very quickly and easily build command line tools using nothing but JavaScript. So using JavaScript, we can easily do that. And I also discovered that, incidentally, Salesforce CLI is all built on the very same framework. So it made perfect sense to start using it. And I developed over the time, I kind of got started. I have whatever commands I develop, I was able to build something, and then it's available as a node package in npm. And just like any other node package, we can install it and then start using it. There is a lot of documentation available online if you're interested to use it. I'll be very happy to. I welcome all the feedback. If anyone can share that, that will be great. So without any further ado, let's get started. How we can use this tool in our day-to-day development. So I'll go through that quickly. So like I mentioned, this qforce command line tool is built on the OCLIF, and basically it is enhancing the Salesforce CLI in some ways. So in order to use qforce, we have to make sure that Salesforce CLI is already installed, configured on your machine. It is built like I designed qforce to work in VS Code because VS Code is kind of a recommended IDE for anything Salesforce. Salesforce is investing heavily into VS Code. So if you're using VS Code and you install qforce, it can help you a lot with your development practice. First thing first, like we have to install it. And like I mentioned, it's a node package, so we can simply issue this npm install qforce, and that will get us started. -G, you can install it globally or you can install it in a specific package. Before we can start using it, we can set up some basic configuration by issuing this config command with the option in it. This will basically create a folder called .qforce and create some classes and a settings JSON that we can use to tweak how we use it. All right. So how does and what does qforce do for us? I'll go into a project that I have already set up. So basically, it is a simple Salesforce project. And in that project, I have already kind of done these initial steps. So qforce is already installed in there. All right. So we are in VS Code now. You can see we have this .qforce package other than our regular force app folder, and it has all the different things that it does. And as I have initiated the project and set up properly, you can see that I have already authenticated with one of my development org. I named it hello. Uh, and now we can start seeing some of the functionality that is into qforce and how it helps us in our development practice. So uh, during the development, there are like we can develop classes and so on in VS Code. A lot of time we have to switch to the console, developer console in Salesforce, and for example, for running the SOQL queries or running some anonymous script. So let's take a look at how that process is made extremely easy using qforce. So within this qforce folder, we will see a file called .query.soql. So if we open this, the basic idea here is we can write any query in here. And on the first line, as a comment, we can define which environment we want to query against. By default, it will use uh, the user that is selected at the project level, but we can also, sometimes we have multiple different developer environments and we have to quickly see the data in different environments, how it looks like. So instead of keep changing the this setting at the project level, we can just query against different org using this comment. So this is a very simple query. We are just saying getting the accounts from this environment. And to run this query, all we have to do is we can just simply save the file. And I have done a little bit of automation in my VS Code that as soon as I save the file, it is executing this command qforceDX query and setting the file path. So this query is automatically executed, and as we can see, it executed and it got back some result. We can see the results in another file called query.csv. So this file is created in the same folder. Let me open that. So here we can see the results of our query. Let's add some other field. Let's say we want to search for We also need the created by dot name. And as you can see, uh, uh, as we have configured the Salesforce Salesforce extension pack in this project, and I have retrieved the object data model using the SFDX command. It is giving me all these options and making the writing the query much easier. So this kind of functionality is not available inside the developer console. It doesn't tell us all this information. So we can quickly get that. So if I make this change, click on save. So this will update the result, and we can see that now the created by dot name is also coming back. Right? This is the name of the this is the created date, and this is the name of the user who created it. We also have the last modified date for some of these records. So the CSV file, by default, it will not have all these color coding. So there are a few extensions. So let me walk you through those quickly. So one of the extensions that I just mentioned that I have installed is called Save and Run. Save and Run. So this extension lets us define the setting in the VS Code setting, where we can define that whenever a certain file is saved, what should happen. If we want to run some query, we can do that. So that can make our process a bit easy. So this is what I have configured in this project. So let me show you. In the .vs code folder, we have the settings.json, and within this setting, we can set up the setting for save and run commands and what we need to match and what should happen. So I have set up two commands related to qforce. One is to execute the query as soon as it is saved, and the same thing for the exit clause, which is basically to execute any anonymous script. All right, so that gives us that. Another extension is CSV, Rainbow CSV. This is the extension that kind of adds all these colors and make reading the CSV extremely easy and powerful. So we can look at each value. It will be color coded, and then it can also tell us that which column it is and what is the name of that column and so on. There are some other extensions, but that we can discuss some other time. So another thing we can do to make this even better is, while we are searching for data and we have to repeatedly run some queries and look at the results, we can create this split view. Let me create a split view. Now I can see these two files side by side. So on my left side is my query, and on the right side is the results. Right. So now, if I example, let's add another field, create a date, save it, and it is executing. Oh, I already have that field. All right. So on the right side, we will see the results of created by ID. Let's add that field. And we can see this. This is now updated. And now we have the created by ID field included. If we need to run the same query against a different environment, we can easily change this, put any other valid alias or the username that we have authenticated against, and we can run the same query against that as well. All right, now let's take a quick look at the exe file. So let me open this here. So same thing, we can execute any script. This is basically replaces our anonymous script execution inside the developer console. So same idea, we on the first line as a comment, I can specify uh, which environment I need to run this script against, and then I can run this. So this is here we have a simple script. So I again save it, and on the save it executed it, and now the result for this we can see the results. Let me open the results in a log file. Out of the box, if we execute a script, the results will be in the terminal that are a bit harder to read. So basically, QDX is making that process a bit easier by saving the results into a log file. And then there are plenty of other tools that let you do other cool stuff with these log files. And it is highlighted and all this, so it is much easier to go through the log this way. All right, is there any questions so far?
Seems like magic to have these queries and executions happening in a snap. Just wondering what is happening behind the scenes, what is happening under the hood that is making this so flawless and executing it very easily. You what you have done in Qforce basically.
Yeah, we will need a whole lot session to go through it, but behind the scene, I'm basically using different commands and combining them together. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that uh, this was just to replace my different bash script that I used to
Hmm,
execute,
hmm,
and combine those different files. So behind the scene, what is happening? It is executing an SFDX command to
hmm, hmm,
execute a query. That query gives us a JSON file, and we can
hmm,
also make it into. We can also try to retrieve the CSV file. But the way CSV file is retrieved and put on the terminal is not very friendly, and
hmm, hmm,
you will
hmm,
have a lot of issues with the formatting of different fields. It kind of creates a mess if you try
hmm,
to
hmm,
use the out of the box SFDX and try to retrieve as a CSV. It can be problematic. With QForce, so behind the scene, I am getting that JSON, converting that JSON, and doing all this cleaning up to make sure the CSV that is generated at the end is 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 in a format that I can readily use it if I need to, for example, move this data into a different environment.
hmm,
If
hmm,
I simply use the SFDX CLI, try to get the data as CSV, it
hmm,
will have some field not properly set up. It doesn't handle the nulls very well. With this, so those there is some data cleaning that is happening in the middle, and it
hmm,
at
hmm,
the end of the day it gives us a valid JSON. So to clean up the data, to process this, see, I'm using different libraries that are so many great people have
Mm-hmm.
contributed a lot on the NPM. So, for
Uh-huh.
example,
Uh-huh.
to parse out and go through the data very quickly. So it's very performant and all that. So I'm making use of all these different libraries that are available
Mm-hmm.
on the internet, and then converting it into a CSV that is clean, that is just right there, ready to be used for any purposes.
And what other good functions we can do using qforce beside running a
So another
SOQL and
thing,
execute?
yep. So this is just a quick rundown. We are running out of time very quickly. I was hoping to cover the migrate command. So
Okay.
this
Yeah.
migration uh, plan file is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
The command, the okay, what has happened here? Okay, so there is a command called migrate in qforce, and this command lets you pretty much replaces the data loader. With the data loader, typically, if you have some data load task, you will have to set up the data loader, point it to the source environment, get the data out, maybe do some cleanup, and then point the data loader to your destination environment and then load that data in there. Right. So that is kind of a typical functionality that you have to do using data loader. This migrate command basically replaces all you need for which, like, you would no longer need the data loader for anything. Data loader is a very old Java-based application that Salesforce developed. There are so many issues with it. If you have done any kind of a significant data loading task, you know what I'm talking about. So all those pain points that you go through with data
Mm-hmm.
loader basically are taken by this migrate command. Behind the scene, like the way migrate command works, we give it a plan, and that plan is basically a simple .js file. So we use
Okay. Okay.
JavaScript to define our plan. What is
Mm-hmm.
it that we want to do? For example, I want to retrieve all the accounts and then I want to load them in a different environment. I
Mm-hmm.
can set up all these attributes here within this. What is my source org name ID? What is the destination ID? And what is my query for this data? If I need to do any further processing, I can set that up also. So in the interest of time, let me go through one of the file that is pretty extensive. So this plan I put together for a client where we needed, it was a CPQ project where we have to create all these codes and orders and opportunities and all that. So in our testing environment, sandbox, we have to create all this test data, and creating that test data is a painful process sometimes. So this was to eliminate like all these complicated and make it like streamlined, and like I can give this script to all the developers and they all can just execute it and get the test data in a uniform way every time in their own dev environment. So let me quickly go through this. There is a lot of documentation online in the qforce. You can read it, but let me go through some of the interesting parts that I'm doing here. So the plan is it is made up of a list of steps, right? So in this plan, I'm saying first step is to generate some accounts. So qforce allows me to generate some sample data using this star random person uh, feature. So You don't have to define anything. So this is already available. So behind the scene, with part of my command line, it is going to generate randomly first name, last name, and so on, and create like a person. I can quickly, using this random dot person, I can get a person, and then I am setting up an account, all these different fields on that account. What is the name? What is the legal name? This was kind of a healthcare related, so we have all those fields, billing street. It creates like a realistic looking city, street, state, zip codes. So your test data looks kind of realistic. Obviously, it's not a real address or names or anything, but it's all made up. It kind of mixes it instead of seeing these names that don't make any sense. These are kind of real first name, last name that are randomly picked up, and it creates a person. So once we create the person, we query that person, save that information, and then we go on and generate some opportunities record, right? And on these opportunities, we also we get the accounts, and for under each account, I'm creating an opportunity, and I can, because I just inserted the account, I can use that account.id and create the opportunity. After that, I can get the opportunity list that I just created, and then I can generate a code. Same idea, I will use this generate data command, get all the information on the code, uh, get the code list, get the code lines, and get the code lines, and then I will make some updates, because like when we are originally inserting the code lines, there are certain fields that we cannot set. So this will update those, and next we will order the codes. So it will create these orders, and so on. So you can see that this is so many steps that developer would have to do manually, like create an account, give all this information, minimal information that they need to test, and then go through all this. And this script basically makes it just one command, and there you go. So you have all this data, and you can control how many accounts and all this you need. And part of the query, you can define what is your source, what is your destination, and all that. So there is extensive documentation here that you can go through. Uh, it tells you all the details about this. So this migrate command is pretty interesting, and that saves me a lot of time every day.
And it surely would save a lot of time for other developers. Thank you for creating QForce. It's been a joy to watch all these amazing command lines that you have built. And would love to have another session with you to understand what is happening under the hood,
Definitely.
and have a better understanding how we can use it in multi-org environments where multiple developers are working. As you mentioned, this extensive plan is definitely helping and saving every developer working on a project with number of hours. So I definitely believe a lot of organizations and Salesforce developers would be interested to see this. Uh, Thank you, Kamar,
Yeah,
for being with us. It's been such a joy to watch all this and learned a lot from you.
sure, no problem. Happy to come back again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Would love to have another session with you. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.